Hello, welcome to the second vlog of 2020. And whilst these were a bit late coming, there was actually an article I found on the BBC website at the very start of this year that I definitely wanted to talk about and get your opinions on and thoughts on as well. It was an article on the BBC website, as I said, from their media editor, Amol Rajan, and his take on, well, basically his predictions for media in 2020. And these across a range of different aspects of the media, mostly industry related, I have to say. And he's picked out 9 predictions, and he's quite open and honest about the fact that, you know, this kind of thing often leads to being shown up or going wrong. In fact, one of his predictions is kind of the opposite of what he thinks, just to sort of just to see if he's going to get proved right or wrong by that. Anyway, there are 9 of these. They're quite interesting. They're quite from a variety of different areas. I'll link to the article below. Have a good read of it and you know, give your opinion on any of these 9 aspects. Is he right or wrong, or are any of them kind of interesting to you? I'm going to pick 3 rather than talk through all 9. I'm going to pick 3 of his predictions. One that I agree with, one that I kind of disagree with, and one that I hadn't really thought about much before. And has got me thinking a little bit more, and I think it's relevant to all of us. Some of these are more relevant to perhaps some of the media products that we're studying on the course as well. So I'll dive straight in with his first prediction, actually, which is to do with trends versus events, and this is to do with the reporting of news. So when we're looking at newspapers as part of component 1, this is a sort of significant aspect of that. So what we mean by trends versus events is this idea of the news reporting stories versus reporting, I suppose, ideas and ongoing stories. That propensity for the news to go for the more sensationalist, reactive aspect of reporting a specific event, compared to maybe reporting trends that are unfolding, that have a more kind of long-term impact on people and the planet and so on. Okay. Now, Rajan's opinion on this is that social media has actually meant that we're much more likely to see events represented, that the more sensationalist, reactive aspects of the news are emphasised by social media, because everyone wants to get in and report on these things quickly. He also says that reporting on events compared to trends is more likely to lead to kind of misreporting, the fake news, if you like, and of course that kind of horrible sensationalist maxim, if it bleeds, it leads. He sees himself as being part of a movement towards reporting trends over events. This is something we do look at when we're studying component 1 as well, a move towards what they call slow news, which is less reactive than, say, tabloid newspapers and sensationalist news broadcasters. I have to say, with this one, I kind of disagree. He feels that maybe that their tables will turn, that we'll become more conscious of how we report news, and that more and more journalists will move towards slow news, as it were. I feel quite cynical disagreeing with him, but I think that actually our appetite for more sensationalist news, for more reactive content, for more short form content is growing, if anything. And that's not to say that there isn't that movement for long form journalism or slow news out there. I totally believe there is, but I think our appetite for that short form news is growing, and I think social media is in part to blame for this, and I think it's in part reinforcing a desire for short news. You know, when most of us consume news in what is perhaps 240 characters or a short video that sometimes feels out of context, then that does emphasize it. Another way that I would disagree with him, though, is that actually I believe that social media has the power to enable more long-form journalism. I think actually social media, if there is an appetite for slow news, for reporting on trends rather than events, then social media will have an important part to play in this. So, and actually, you know, he may agree with that as well. So unfortunately, I disagree with the point that it's gonna, maybe there will be some kind of slow news revolution. But as the way I see it at the moment, short form sensationalist news seems to be dominating and will do for the foreseeable. The second prediction he makes, one that I do agree with, is to do with the BBC. And again, it feels slightly cynical to agree with him on this report, but his prediction is that there will be a shortage of friends for the BBC, as he says. He believes that the corporation will come under increasing fire and actually will start to see maybe a slow dismantling or breakup of the BBC in one form or another. And I have to say, I'm really sad about this, but I think it might be true. I think that the BBC will enter in a period of real risk. We're already seeing a couple of odd things happening in the BBC. I think, as far as I know, the new government has ushered in a change of law so that not paying your licence fee will no longer become a criminal offence, more a civil one. So whereas before you could be put behind bars for not paying your licence fee, now it would essentially be just a civil crime. Now, and whilst that makes a sort of sense from a sort of libertarian background, it does weaken the BBC's position. Now, I've always maintained that as long as there are people from both sides of political arguments or the spectrum of politics criticising the BBC, then that's a good thing. You do get people from the political right arguing that the BBC is far too liberal, left-wing in its beliefs, and too soft on different aspects. And then, of course, you've also got people on the left arguing that the BBC is part of an establishment. It props up institutions and so on and so forth. And my argument has always been, whilst the BBC is attacked by both sides, then it's probably doing the right job. It's probably somewhere in the middle. And of course, the problem with my argument is that if you're being attacked by all sides, then it's easy to kind of suggest that things should change. And whilst I wasn't, personally, I think there were particular issues over the way that the recent general election was reported and the scrutiny under which certain groups were held. I also know that the government coming in felt that they were also attacked and unfairly treated by the BBC, and now is an opportunity for them to make some changes, perhaps in their favour. Who can say? I know that there's been a change to the Director General. Tony Hall is stepping down earlier than expected. Some believe that that's in order to safeguard the BBC and its current charter. We'll have to wait and see. But sadly, I think that there could be some significant changes come to the BBC. Hopefully, they'll be for the better. But I think that our kind of public service broadcaster, which is held in such high esteem across the world and which has been a really important part of our democracy for so long, might be under threat. We'll have to see. And the third prediction, which is one that I hadn't really thought about before, but is a really interesting case, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to say it's not something I had thought of before, is to do with eco-browsing. And that's the fact that whilst we might be aware of the energy we use by plugging in devices and using electronics, in our own lives, whether that's a screen or a phone or our other electronic devices at home, one thing we don't think about is the amount of energy used by sort of behind the scenes. In particular, how much energy is used by browsing the internet, because of course we might simply think of the computer we have and the device that we use, the phone, and how much we charge that or how much electricity that uses, but of course there are huge amounts of systems and hardware and drivers that are powering the internet. Every time we search for something, it's actually using some electricity somewhere else, and it's something that we're all guilty of not thinking about. It's using probably far much more power and electricity than we do individually, but we're able to kind of sort of, if you like, offset that guilt by just not thinking about it. What he predicts is that there'll be a wave of eco-browsing that will take off, and certainly I had heard of this before. There are a number of browsers that are alternative to Google, which is obviously the browser that most people use, that actually market themselves as being carbon neutral, is actually offsetting the electricity they use. One is called Ecosia, although I'm sure that there are other carbon neutral browsers available, but it's something that we'll be encouraged to think about, and in times where we're much more aware of our own sort of climate or sort of carbon footprint and our own impact on climate change, then perhaps this is something that will take off in the next year. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more. Anyway, read through the other ones that are out there. Look at the other 6 that he's talked about. I'd be really interested to see what your thoughts are, and of course your own predictions for 2020. How will the media landscape change? How will the industry as we know it, or the industries as we know it, change as well? Leave your comments below, and yeah, wherever you see this, give us your feedback, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.